I met and married the love of my life online in my 60s. And now, in my 70s, I have the time and the mind space to identify patterns and extract lessons from my wild and unusual life. My mother thought I was possessed by the devil, so I had to figure it out. And by surviving that, I started developing my resilience muscle. My education has really been School of Hard Knocks and being pretty much a street fighter for 50 years, my first 50 years of survival. I ended up in Ethiopia in a very marginalized area and worked with people that really didn't have a chance to have a healthy life. And that then became my passion. I wanted to figure out how they could possibly have a chance.
Welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Today, our guest is Lori Pappas, humanitarian entrepreneur and author of The Magic of Yes. Today, we will discuss her career journey, the transformative power of trauma, and the magic of saying yes. Hi, Lori. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Eliza. I'm so happy to be here.
And I'm happy that you are here too and to discover more about your story. So let's start with your childhood, as we always do. You have a stories of a difficult childhood. Can you tell us how you found the strength to redefine your core beliefs and chart your own course in life?
I'll tell you, I didn't have any choice to become responsible for my life. My mother thought I was possessed by the devil,
Oh my
and my
God.
dad committed me to a nut house. So I had to figure it out. And by surviving that, I started developing my resilience muscle. I had to become resilient. Like I said, to survive, I didn't have a choice. In those days, people in a mental institution would go through either a lobotomy or shock treatment. And as soon as I learned about that, I was like 16 years old, and I wanted to make damn sure that did not happen to me. So I figured out what it was they wanted me to say, and I said it, and I got out. And really, to be really honest, I didn't redefine my core beliefs until I was in my 50s. My whole entrepreneurial career, I was just a bulldog, and I didn't have time for self-reflection or anything like that. I just relied on my intuition, just plowed ahead.
So I believe at the time there was no anything like self-reflection or talking about psychology, self-discovery. And as you mentioned, you just figure out what was the best way to get out of that terrible situation. But looking back, do you think you actually at the time did some self-reflection and did it help you to navigate and heal from that horrible experience? Or did you just go on with life because you were in survival mode?
I would say I was in survival mode until I sold my business. And I sold my business when I was 49. And so up until that time, I really don't think I did much self-reflection at all. I just worked my butt off. But then I was in my second unsatisfactory marriage. I had kids, I had stepkids. I was working 80 hours a week. I didn't self-reflect. It wasn't until I sold the business and my son at 19 years old had a traumatic brain injury. And that led to addiction for him on drugs. And that led him to a rehab center. And at the rehab center, that's when I first became aware that I had suffered from PTSD. I had suffered from PTSD really two ways. One was from my mother's behavior when I was a child. And then the second one, which was the one that was really staring me in the face, was my son's accident. Because by that time, whenever I heard a siren go off or a loud noise or anything that would alert me that somebody was in distress, I'd panic because it brought back the memories of what I went through with my son. And so that's the trigger that caused me to do self-reflection.
And so I guess at that time then is when you had to face everything, all the feelings that you had inside and what you went through.
I was jarred out of my numbness.
Yeah.
David's accident actually did. It was the trigger that got me on the road to healing and to doing the inner child work and so on.
Mm. So if we go back to your childhood, while you were in this situation, did you actually have any dream? Were you thinking of something that was giving you hope, what you wanted to become or what you wanted to do?
Oh, absolutely. I lived in the world of books. And one of my favorite books series was the Black Stallion series by William Farley. And about that time, the Elizabeth Taylor movie was popular with National Velvet. And I thought, oh, it'd be fun to be a jockey. Of course, I wasn't the right size. And I was also a competitive swimmer. And I thought, oh, it would be great to win the Olympics and be like my hero at the time, Donna Di Verona. And I was taking piano lessons from a concert pianist. And so my dream was, oh, I'd like to be a concert pianist. So I had those kinds of dreams just based on heroines that happened to pass through my life.
Mm. And what is your educational background? Did you manage to study, to go to school?
Not much. I had some college. I quit college to put my husband through. So I basically got his degree because I did most of his papers and so forth. When I was in my for profit business, I went to a couple executive management courses, which were fabulous at the University of Minnesota and also at Stanford. And I learned a lot there. But basically, my education has really been School of Hard Knocks and being pretty much a street fighter for 50 years, my first 50 years of survival.
And I guess you must have learned lots of things because at some point you actually had an amazing career. But how did you start your professional life? Or better, what was your first job?
Oh, my first job was I was hired for 3 days to reorganize a file room at a mortgage banking company. And I did a really good job. And so they put me in the accounting department. I started using bookkeeping machines. And pretty soon, for the next maybe 5 years, every place I work, I'd automate because I didn't like dealing with detail. But that was a woman's role in the United States at the time, was to work in an office. And then I started selling computers, which I really enjoyed. I was one of the first women in the United States to sell computers. But once again, it was that desire to be efficient. How can I be really productive and so forth? So my for-profit job was a software company. I discovered a on-tap market, small manufacturing companies, right at the time that personal computers came out. So that was a natural fit for me, even though it was selling into a very male dominated world. But if we look at it, I had pretty tough skin in those days. I was really resilient. I had survived some pretty tough stuff. So it didn't bother me to be navigating in a man's world, telling them how to run their business. And because I didn't have any money, I was a single mom with two little girls when I started my business. We became pioneers in telesales and in webinars because I couldn't afford to travel. So it was really just recognizing opportunities, looking at what I had available, and then making the best of it.
So you've been very innovative, and it's curious. I was wondering while you were talking, how do you see innovation today?
I'll tell you the truth, Elisa.
Yeah.
It is amazing. It is amazing to me because 50 years ago, it was 50 years ago, because I'm 75 right now, I was a pioneer. I was one of the first to do all this stuff. And now I'm a Luddite. I can't, everything takes me so long to figure out.
Oh.
And they always say everything is so intuitive. not to a 75-year-old brain, it's not very intuitive, but it's fun because I'm still learning and I get a little better bit by bit.
Yeah, I think it's intuitive, but definitely everything requires a lot of our time and is less human maybe because we are very dependent on technology for everything, and there's only so much that a human being can spend in front of a laptop.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we are spending most of our days like that. And yeah, no, great. But you're definitely an inspiration for younger women because you went through this journey. So was it then that you reached 40s and at some point you became a national award-winning entrepreneur?
Yeah, it was my software company. It was called Job Boss Software. It was a time when programmers were very expensive to hire. I decided that I would try to get my company positioned as one of the best small companies to work for. And there's a magazine in the US called Inc. magazine, and they had an Inc. 500 list. And I realized that the time that would be best for me to get on that list was the early days because your denominator is small, so you can grow very fast. And after I think like year 6, I was on that list, and then I leveraged that and became known as one of the best small companies to work for. So it's always been a matter of what is the goal and what variables do I have that I could leverage or control in order to reach that goal.
Mhm. At some point in your 50s, you retired, but actually, that was not the life you wanted. And you took a bold step by moving to Africa and founded a charity. What motivated this shift in your life's focus and why Africa?
In my early 50s, I really did 2 things or 3 things. I did volunteer work, I did a lot of personal work, and traveled. And a couple of those trips was exploring Africa. And I just became enthralled with the heartbeat of the continent. And all the countries are so different, but very interesting. And one day I was in the middle of the Sahara Desert, about 9 hours from nowhere. And a little girl came up to me and she had flies on her face. And at this point of time, I was pretty bored with retirement. And I was at a crossroads. I was either going to ramp up, by that time, I had started a strategic marketing company. And I was either going to ramp that up and give all my money away, or I was going to work for free. And when I saw that little girl with flies on her face, the same age as my granddaughter, Ella, I realized that could be my little Ella, that she had done nothing special to be born into my family. And that little girl had done nothing wrong to be born into that disease ridden life. So I thought I'd started a for profit business in the States and grew it, and it was successful, and I retired. I knew what to do. Why not start an international charity? And little did I realize how different it would be in a different culture. I ended up in Ethiopia in a very marginalized area and worked with people that really didn't have a chance to have a healthy life. And that then became my passion. I wanted to figure out how they could possibly have a chance. And that's why we did so many different initiatives. By that time, I knew how to network and I was able to get grants from USAID and the UK and the EU and others. And we did a lot of things for a lot of people. But then it became unsafe and I had to leave. But during the time I lived there, I lived by myself in a house in Addis Ababa, which is the capital. And a lot of evenings there would be no electricity and it would be dark. And it really was before the time when we had all these automated power sources and all of that. So I would sit in the dark with candlelight and be forced to just think. And it was a wonderful time of my life because I had a lot to think about. I was working with these very marginalized people that didn't have the same cultural constraints I had. The women really had no rights. And they really they have a very hard life, but they are so strong and they're so resilient and they're so kind to each other and they're so collaborative. And so I started really thinking about collaboration versus competition. And here I had built my career being a fierce competitor. And now I was in the world of collaboration. And that was a wonderful growing opportunity for me.
It sounds incredible. And from there, at some point, you wrote a book called The Magic of Yes. So, first of all, what does saying yes mean to you, and how has that transformed your life?
Back in 2007, when I first had that commitment that I was going to work in Ethiopia, it just started the idea, the magic of yes, embracing, stepping beyond fear, embracing the new. It kept resonating in my mind. And you have to remember, I really am not a fearful person. I had to learn to overcome fear really young. And so I've always loved to learn and loved the curiosity of new adventures and experiences. The missing piece for me was that reflection. And Ethiopia forced me into that period of reflection. So I learned these wonderful lessons and I just became passionate about sharing them. And so, really, with the book, it traces my life. That's the backstory, but it's divided into sections of how do you go about discovering your essence of who you really are, your authentic self. And then what do you do, and what are some ways to help you navigate the chaos that we all experience? We all go through a chaotic period in our life. And then how do we become free of that? How do we become, how are we able to start our journey of actualization, of really tapping into who we really are? And then the last section is finding your peace. So it became a natural, my life story became a natural backdrop to that progression. And in writing the book, it allowed me to do a lot of research so that I could really find out what the experts say about everything. And then when I got all done with the book, I thought boring because it's all about me. Let's put other women in there. And so then I set out to find extraordinary, ordinary women that would exemplify each one of those chapters and wrote a bit about them. And then I thought, am I really giving the reader a blueprint that they can follow or some guidance that they can follow if they want to win with the cards they were dealt? Or how do they take risks and explore opportunities? Or how do they set themselves free? So then I came up with a dream framework for every chapter. That dream is an acronym for desire, reflection, explore, acknowledgement, and mantra. And that just solidified things for me and gave me a great basis to frame up the points and the discussions and to give some guidance. And because my dream is to help other women find their voice and to feel good about who they are, not just about what they can do, but who they are.
Mhm. And so, based on your book and the different phases that you identified, what type of advice would you give to someone that is looking to embrace life opportunities as courageously as you did?
I would say there's really two things. One is become really good at making lots of little mistakes. Just give yourself permission to try different things. And as soon as you see it doesn't work, stop, think about it, and try something a little bit different. So become really good at making mistakes and have a fast cycle time. So you build that resilience muscle. You build that ability to recognize what works, what doesn't, how you're doing. And then the second thing is you need to carve out at least, I would say, 15 minutes a day for you. And it doesn't need to be all at the same time, even. It could be 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there. And it could be as simple as find a little rock and just sit and hold that little rock in your hand and just think about how it feels and how smooth it is and how solid it is. And just put your attention on that little thing in your hand. And that will help you start learning how to be present, because we need to learn how to be present in the moment and to embrace the moment. And it doesn't, you don't automatically flip a switch. It needs to start small and then it grows. When I first started practicing mindfulness, I wasn't very good at it. And now I'm getting better, but I'd give myself about a C. I'm not an A plus yet, but I'll get there because I'm an overachiever. But it's a practice that starts small. And I remember when I was in Ethiopia, I used to sleep with a little rock in my hand, literally, because that's what gave me comfort in the midst of that chaos.
And for me, when I think about your book, The Power of Yes, it makes me wonder that in some ways there is a connection with some people that they may say no to a lot of opportunities. Based on that, what would you say? What is your reflection on people that maybe needs to change their attitude and change the way when opportunities come into life, and maybe they should be open to say yes instead of dismiss them?
I would say if you're always saying no to opportunity or you're afraid of opportunity, what are you doing? You're really stagnating. You're staying still. And when you stay still and you don't do anything as far as looking at options, you're really saying no, because not having a decision really is a no decision. And the only way that you can grow is if there's a stimulus. If you're really afraid to say yes, that's okay. Make a backup plan. Think about what's the worst that could happen. If you say yes and it doesn't work, what's the very worst that could happen? And once you identify what's the worst that could happen, it helps you start thinking of solutions to if that worst thing happens, which means that you're starting to put together a plan. And eventually something will change. Nothing's going to change. And you have variables. We all have choice. Every single one of us, no matter how bad the situation, we have choice on how we're going to respond. And it's a matter of learning how to exercise choice. And it takes practice.
Yes, definitely. So let's talk about personal growth and relationships. So you mentioned that you found the love of your life in your 60s. How
Mhm.
did this relationship shift your perspective on life and love?
I'll tell you what, that was one scary thing for me. It was really, it terrible. I'd had two failed marriages. Here I was living over in Africa by myself. I loved it. Nobody telling me what to do. I was free of my cultural constraints. It was very liberating. And yet I would be sitting at a restaurant and I'd look around and I would see a couple that were talking and they seemed to enjoy each other. And I thought, oh, all right. And then I'd see another one. And eventually I met this woman that I chatted with a little bit. And she said that she had lost her husband or gotten divorced or something. And she had decided she was going to give herself a year to entertain the idea that if a good man came into her life, she was going to give him a chance. And I thought, oh my God, that sounds really scary. And I went home and I'll never forget where I was even standing in my dingy little house. And I was trying to say to myself, okay, I'm going to give somebody a chance if they come in my life. Oh no, I'm not going to do that. And I started practicing it, but I was curious. And I'm somebody that usually says yes to curiosity. And so I worked on myself. And then I thought, okay, I could do online dating because I'm going to be in control of the delete key.
Mm.
And I was at a point where I was a little bored and I was curious. And so I gave it a try. And of course, I made myself a bit inaccessible in that here in my profile picture, I was in my field clothes. And in the verbiage, I put down, okay, this is how it is. I'm okay getting together once a quarter for a long weekend, someplace fun. And then you get on a plane and you go back home and do your thing. And I get to go back and do my thing. And I didn't get very many matches. And so I thought, how come I'm not getting matches? And so I started making a little bit of adjustments and eventually changed my location from Ethiopia to Minnesota because that's where my kids lived.
Mm.
And after a couple of months, I thought, oh, Bowie. And I went back home for leave for a couple of weeks. My granddaughter was over. We were bored, and we decided we were going to go online and see if we could find Ella a grandpa. And Bill's butcher's picture came up, and she said, "Send him a smile." So I did, and all of a sudden, this guy starts communicating with me, and he sounds reasonable. And little did I know, he was a former campaign manager. And when he had seen my picture and read my profile, he decided that I was the woman for him.
Oh.
And he's so used to winning campaigns that he ended up winning. And or he thinks he won. And but the first time we got together, I remember telling him, now don't think I'm going to marry you. And he said, okay, we're not going to even talk about it. Let's just be unfettered and free together. And I thought, oh, I like that line. I can do that.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we ended up getting married. And here we are 9 years later, happy as can be.
Oh, what a lovely story. And it's good to know life has its own season and things can come and go, people come and go. And you have a beautiful story to say that you found love in your 60s. Um,
Yeah.
so hopefully that is an inspiration for everyone that is out there that is still looking for love. So you went through different phases on your life. How is your understanding of fulfillment and happiness evolved over the decades? What did make you happy before, in the middle, and now?
It changes. It does. It changes because I would say my first purpose in life and fulfillment was becoming independent and being able to not be dependent on my parents for anything, be able to earn my own money and pay my own bills. So that was my life's purpose. Then once I got that, then it was to build a business and have it be successful and help my customers be more successful and retire. And that was my purpose. To me, that was like the American dream. And my father was an immigrant and he always talked about the American dream. So I got it and it was pretty empty at the end. So then my next goal was to help these people over in Ethiopia to have a chance for a healthy life. And I figured out how that could happen with the different initiatives. But then I became powerless to do anything more because the funding climate changed. There was a lot of conflict in the country, and I needed to leave. And then my purpose became finding happiness for me. That became my purpose. And with Bill, I did. And now I'm on another purpose. And now my purpose is to try to help other women find inner peace. That really matters to me. It's not about the book sales, it's about helping women find inner peace and a sense of harmony in their life because I think we have a tough role. We do. We've got a lot of demands on us and we're being tugged in a lot of different directions. And we need to be able to have a safe place within ourselves to go and to be nurtured. And all of us have wise women within us. We just need to tap into that.
Yeah, definitely. And time has gone really fast, and we're reaching the end of this episode, but we still have a few more questions. So, first of all, if there is one message you would like listener to take away from your story, what would it be?
It would be just that no matter where you are in your life's journey, you do have a wise woman within you. And I'm talking to both men and women here, that we all have wisdom that we carry within us through our DNA over the ages and the centuries. And it's ours to tap into, but it's a matter of peeling back the layers to allow those kernels of wisdom to flourish and to be nurtured and to grow.
And really, now the last question. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
My younger self, I would say, I really wish that I had realized that I had been traumatized and that I really needed to heal myself, that I needed that nurturing, that I wasn't some tough broad that could just bull my way through things. And I really wish that if I had been able to be nurtured, to learn how to nurture myself and to find that self worth within me at a younger age, I would have been able to nourish and nurture my children better. I would have been a better partner. I would have been able to be a more empathetic, compassionate to other people as well as to myself. That's my wish.
Thank you, Lori, so much for sharing your insights, experiences, and story with us today. It's been great having you.
It's been very fun. It's been great. I love it.
Thank you. And last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of the Career Changers. Thank you.